Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Anyway, hey, episode 317 of I Am Salt Lake podcast. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Chris.
And my name's Chrissy.
Hey, this episode of the podcast is proudly sponsored by Market Source Real Estate, Five Wives Vodka, and Wizarding Days. We're going to tell you more about them later. All of the links to connect with them are going to be on the episode show notes, though. Today, we have an awesome interview that we're going to be playing for you guys. Isaac Atencio, he is a local Salt Lake City barber. He happens to be my barber.
Which I was really excited about because when you meet someone's barber, it's almost like meeting some like best friend that you never get to meet.
Well, and I wanted to give that full disclosure.
Right.
That he is my barber. But however, even if he has never cut my hair, I would still want to bring him on the podcast because he has a fascinating story.
Yeah, he's an interesting person.
We find out what got him into barbering and what eventually led him to open up his own shop, the Salt Lake Barber Company. Great story, great individual. Isaac is a really cool guy. You're going to want to stay tuned for that interview here in just a minute. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, tell them where they can go, Chrissy.
You can go to iamsaltlake.com. Fancy that.
This is where you can listen to all the episodes of the podcast. You can find blog posts.
Yeah, you can even look up events going on in Salt Lake. We try to keep it as full as possible on our calendar.
My goal is to make our event calendar the biggest and best event calendar in all of Salt Lake City.
I like that goal.
There's also
Let's do it.
There's also links on the website on all the ways you could subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget, you can listen to us in Spotify now. So with all that being said, let's jump into that conversation that we had with Isaac when he came over to our office, shared his story about becoming a barber. Enjoy, and thank you so much for listening.
One of my favorite candies, and I don't eat a lot of candy either, but like those caramel apple suckers.
Oh my gosh, those were the best candy ever invented.
What about, did you ever have the caramel apple sugar babies? Have you ever seen them? They're very difficult to find.
I have seen them, haven't had them. But
okay, but you got,
I've never even heard of them.
They're very rare out there. More during Halloween and stuff like that, but they're very good. I've actually ordered them. They're one of the few candies that I've ordered off the internet.
Wait, really? Is that true?
Very true. 100% true.
Well, now I know what to get you for Valentine's
Day. A little bit
Day.
rare fall flavored candy.
Before we start, one more.
Well, there we go. Cheers.
Cheers.
You guys ever do toasts?
Toast. Like have toast?
Like where you stand up and you talk?
Well, I mean, not like a Toastmaster toast, but like I have a friend that he's very adamant that when he takes a shot, he does a toast. And they're all, short limericks, stuff like that. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, wow.
Do you have a limerick?
I don't. I'm not that clever.
I'm not quick enough to do anything like that.
Isaac, if you and I met at a bar, say we were at a legit bar right now, and I'm like, hey, tell me about yourself, man. What would you say? Like, what's your 30-second elevator pitch? Do you have one?
30-second elevator pitch.
Or I'm like, what do you do for work? What's your story? What's your life about?
Well, honestly, that happens often. So I am usually out in my shop gear. So a hat, a hoodie, something like that. And people will come up and be like, oh, you're a barber, or
just automatically expecting it.
Well, I mean, I advertise it pretty loudly with my attire. I pretty much wear my shop clothes around. So that's usually how it starts. People ask, oh, you work at a barbershop? And then I kind of like, oh yeah, well I actually own one down the street at Salt Lake Barber Company, and then kind of get talking from there. But honestly, I don't know if I have an actual 30-second pitch.
Well, I don't know. That's just kind of a generic terminology. But so you're a barber, which we're going to get into. You own a barber shop. Let's back up though a little bit. I know you listen to the podcast, so I feel silly. It's like you know all the directions we're going to go. Where were you born?
I was born here in Salt Lake. Grew up in Rose Park.
Okay.
I lived there nearly all my life. I moved out of Rose Park when I was 29, actually 30. So I'm 33 now. I moved out of there, moved downtown, but
you got out.
Yeah. I mean, I lived my whole life in Rose Park. I honestly thought, that's where I would live forever. I bought a home there that I had for 8 years. I sold it. Yep, sold it, moved back in with my old man for a little bit while I was in school. and then moved downtown. And honestly, I'm trying to figure out if I ever want to go back and get out of downtown. I love being downtown.
See, Chrissy,
I would say from experience, just stay there.
I was living in a suite apartment when Chrissy and I first met right downtown. She moved in with me there for a little while.
And then I ruined his life.
And I'll tell you, it was nice living right down. But
Yeah.
Rose Park, man, that's kind of the up and coming area, they say.
It really is. Rose Park, Glendale, kind of what could be considered the west side of Salt Lake City proper. Man, it's crazy how much real estate is going up there and kind of just people moving through. But I'm such a proponent of
Being downtown.
Not being downtown, but being in Rose Park. It's honestly, if someone wants to be close to the city without being
Smack in the middle of it.
smack in the middle of downtown, exactly. I mean, you can't get closer freeway access. I mean, you have all the freeways right by. You're 5 to 10 minutes away from downtown proper.
It's a really cute area too. I love driving through there.
And on top of it, it's diverse, it's really low key. It gets a bad rep, or has had a bad rep, for being
The ghetto.
or
It's just more the working class man, the middle class. It's not
exactly.
really like the east side tends to get a little more rich.
Well, and you find that it's the same families that have been there for years. Right now there's this huge trend of people buying their grandparents' house and renovating it and still staying in the neighborhood. And it's the best sense of community in Salt Lake that I've seen.
So your parents still live there? Your
Correct.
dad, or
Yeah.
so you're saying same house you grew up in?
My mom lives in the house I grew up in. My dad just sold his house, which I grew up in since the time I was 14. My grandparents live there. All
you
my
got some
sisters live
history
there.
there,
Yeah,
man. That's
absolutely.
cool.
That is cool.
My sister actually lived across the street from me. And when people ask what my favorite part or what I miss most about being in Rose Park, the best part was my sister lived across the street from me. She owned a house across the street, and I got to go walk over there and talk with her whenever I wanted. It was great.
That's really cool, especially if you get along with your sister.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, that's the thing I miss most is being that close to family.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 3 sisters and a younger brother. And then I have a slew of step siblings that I don't really talk to very much.
That's how I got a lot of that too. You don't have any stepbrothers or sisters, do you, Chris?
Same mom and dad.
Same mom and dad.
Yeah, they had 8 of us, but we don't even talk that much.
I know. Are you pretty close to your family, even though you don't live? Still in the Rose Park
I would
area?
say so. My family.
You're saying that just because they're probably listening.
Exactly.
Right?
No. Honestly, and my sisters have just a ton of kids that are great. I do wish that I could be a little closer, but
sure.
I mean, we're all pretty tight knit.
I gotcha. So growing up, did you want to always be a barber?
No, actually.
The boy with like a pair of
Boy with the scissors running around the
there you
house.
go.
Every mom loves that.
No, I had multiple family members who were into hair. And then 2 of my sisters actually went to cosmetology school. One still does it full time. The other one didn't really pursue it as a career. But for me, I actually grew up wanting to be a chef. That was what I thought I was going to do pretty much my entire life. Except for when I was real little, I still have it, a poster that I wrote about myself that said I wanted to be a Domino's delivery guy. But
hey,
So food industry.
That's every boy's dream, though, right?
I just wanted to be able to drive around town and do whatever the hell I wanted, I guess. But I actually enrolled in culinary school twice in my life and ultimately chickened out both times, mostly because it's a rough.
So you paid the money to go.
No. I had gone through the enrollment process.
Oh, okay. I was going to say,
and then
you
didn't
pay the
jump.
money and then you end up
Right.
not even going
Well,
twice.
that's a really intense career.
It is. And I love to cook. It's something I still keep as a hobby, but ultimately you work weekends, holidays, nights, and you start out as a grunt, which, there's nothing wrong with it. I respect everybody. I hang out with a lot of chefs. I purposely weasel my way into that circle because I want to know all about it. But it was a little bit too much of a commitment to.
But you could have
go down that
became a
career path.
private chef or something like that for say somebody famous up in Park City or something, right?
There's definitely people that do that kind of thing and stuff, but ultimately I chickened out and it worked out for the best. So.
Yeah. Well, then you fast forward to becoming a barber.
Yeah,
Should we talk about
Let's
that?
talk
Should we
about
get
that.
into that a little bit here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Very cool.
What made you interested in becoming a barber?
For me, it was kind of happenstance. I had been working for a long time as a technician for the cable company in town. I did that for almost 10 years.
So you were the guy who would come out to our house when we complain and fix it?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I did that facet of it. I honestly did nearly every facet of that job that I could before I kind of hit the ceiling. I couldn't move around inside of that job anymore without having to go to like a supervisor role, which I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be a babysitter. I applied for all sorts of other jobs in that company, and it just wasn't panning out. And so throughout that time, I had a roommate who, as it happens, was balding at a really young age. And
One of the less fortunate
for sure. And he kept giving me crap all the time about how I had a full head of hair, but for the longest time, I just buzzed it. I would buzz it.
I used to do that too, man.
Or my sister, who, went to cosmetology school, would buzz it for me. Mm-hmm. And finally,
And it would probably bug the crap out of him, huh?
Yeah.
It's like, you have hair. That's what people would tell me. Chris, you have hair. Why are you buzzing it?
Exactly. And so I finally conceded to him and was like, okay, fine. You know what? If you shut up, I'll go to a goddamn barbershop and get my hair cut or start doing something with it. So I went and kind of looked around for a couple barbershops in town, and there was a few that I went to. And
let me interject there
yeah.
really fast, though. How did you know to go to a barbershop? Because I used to go to like Supercuts or one of those bizarre places, fantastic, because that's what you see. And that's what you knew. Like,
That's where guys go. That's what you grew up thinking guys go
how
to.
did you know to, and I'm trying to even educate. Let's educate our listeners. How did you know to go to a barbershop?
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, at the time for me, like I said, I had family members that were in the
industry. So you knew.
My dad's girlfriend of a long time, she is a stylist. And so, she used to cut my hair when I was a bit younger, but I knew that if I was going to get my hair cut and actually do something with it rather than buzzing my hair at this point, that I was going to want a different experience than a salon experience. And I didn't think of it in terms of that, but at the time, there was a couple like musicians that I had followed for a while that started getting some really cool haircuts. And I was like, I want that. And, one of the perks of being a cable technician is you do drive around town all day. You see, businesses, buildings, houses, neighborhoods, all that stuff. And one of the things I saw was a barbershop that had opened up kind of near the Sugar House area. And I didn't know anything about it, but one day after work, I stopped in there and went to get a haircut. And the experience that I had at that particular barbershop was not great, but I knew that when I was in there, I was like, okay, this is definitely in the realm of what I'm looking for. And then from there, with that kind of bad experience that I had in that particular barbershop, I knew that I had also seen a couple others. So I went to the next one and I walked in, and the barber there wasn't taking walk-in appointments at the time, but gave me a card, told me to come back, and I went to him for, a year after that. And it was great. I knew that was the experience I wanted, and then subsequently found a couple other shops from there. But ultimately for me, what happened was it was the experience of being in the barbershop. I loved the smells, being in the chair. I mean, it was literally my time to go in and decompress. It felt like a massage, you know what I mean? And they, at both of those shops, they would do the vibrating massage afterwards on the shoulders, stuff like that. But that's what set it up for me. I loved being in the chair so much that I then asked myself, how do I stay in the chair all the time? And how do I be in the barbershop all the time? And that's where it happened. It wasn't even about cutting hair. It was about, how do I stay in the barbershop all the time?
And having that experience all the time.
Well, Chrissy knows how it is. When I come back after a haircut, holy cow, I feel like $1 million, man.
He does. And what I want to know, so Chris goes to you for his haircuts.
Right.
And I think we all know that barbers are also kind of like therapists.
Absolutely.
What I want to know is, how much crap does he talk about me when he's in your chair?
I don't talk any crap about her.
Not at all.
No.
It's all good.
I don't even know, what do I talk? I can't even remember. It is funny though. Sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'll be talking to you and I'll be like, did I just say that? Did I say that out loud?
Well, there's something about it.
And then we'll be talking and other people will be getting haircuts and you're like, uh-oh, they can hear us too.
Absolutely.
Like you feel like you're in your own little bubble right there,
You
right?
do. You feel like you're in
Absolutely.
your own little world with a really good friend who's just taking care of you. You know?
It's so incredible to see where a conversation can go in a barbershop. It can be one-on-one with the barber. It can, evolve from the one barber chair to the next. And before you know it, the entire shop is in on a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what really does it for me is when everyone's talking and it's so loud that I can't even think about what I want to say. But, even just like talking to you when you come in, I mean, it can go from anything about family to where you grew up to music to, how a conversation evolves in a barbershop is one of the most incredible things that I've experienced.
Sometimes you're probably like, maybe this conversation shouldn't be going here.
No, it's true. It's true. There's some times where I kind of have to check myself a little
You're
bit,
like,
or
wait a minute.
be like, "Hey, we need to change the conversation."
But I guess it also depends on whose hair you're cutting. Because I mean, I'm sure you've been cutting some people's hairs for a long time.
yeah, I mean, I have a couple clients of mine, which, as it turns out, are my little brother's best friends. They've been coming to get haircuts from me since I was in barber school. They were my first kind of like repeat clients, and they still come to get haircuts from me, and they still refer people to me, and it's really cool. But the other part to that too is it's really cool when you can also, and this is what I loved about going as well. It wasn't just about like having a conversation, but it was the times when you can go in and just sit in the chair, close your eyes, and completely relax too. That stuff's really awesome.
That hot towel over your face.
Exactly.
Like you said, all that, man.
And just be able to decompress. That's the best part about it.
I got to tell you, I'm a little bit jealous because when guys talk about the barbershop, it is so much more relaxing sounding than a salon.
And you know what's crazy about it, Chrissy, and don't take this the wrong way, Isaac, but it's actually very affordable to go get a guy's haircut. Like, I don't think a lot of guys realize, well, barbershops don't cost an arm and a leg to go get a nice
Very
haircut. True. I mean, some of these.
Oh, yeah, it's
like if you
way
were to go
expensive.
get your haircut, holy
It's like $60 just for a haircut.
Yeah. Like, that's what I'm talking about.
Well,
like,
and a lot of, what a lot of people don't realize too, we'll get, some cosmetologists or even some educators, or I have a few really wealthy clients who will come in and be like, "Wow, you don't charge enough for your haircuts."
Well, you don't, but I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. No, I'm gonna edit that out so you never hear that
But
again.
I mean, at the same time too, it's there will be a point in which we raise our prices. It's kind of the way of things, but at the same time, what a lot of people don't realize is that salons and barbershops charge differently, because if you were a male going to a salon to get your haircut, you'd pay probably in that $60 to $80 range for one haircut. Now, that is not really conducive for someone that would want to come back every between 2 to 6 weeks.
That's true. Men need their haircut way more often.
Absolutely.
I like how he extended the 6 weeks, because that's about where I'm at right now.
Well, I mean,
I used to be a 2-week guy. I used to be that way.
That's kind of in the realm of where that would be. Definitely we
Depending
get
on how life is going.
Right.
There are some guys, though, you'll talk to them every 7 days. Boom, they'll be in there. And I'm just like, I don't even have that kind of time to come in there every 7 days.
There's absolutely the people that come in weekly, bi-weekly. Average, I would say, be about 4 weeks.
Do you ever does somebody ever come in and you're like thinking to yourself, you do not need a haircut?
Yeah.
'Cause that's what I've wondered. Like back in the day when I used to go in a lot, I'd be like, I wonder if they're judging me right now. But I'm like, I'm paying for this, so what do they care?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a couple folks that come in weekly for me.
And I don't mean that a bad way.
No.
I'm not trying to make them feel funny either.
And honestly, it just really depends on kind of what it is that you're going for. Like, I have a client of mine who is amazing. He comes in nearly weekly, and he just likes to look like he just had a haircut all the time. And, he's also in kind of the same industry and really likes to just look good all the time. But, we have guys that come in every, twice a year.
Yeah.
That's
how I used to be way back in the day. I'd get a haircut and then you start wearing the hat because you're like, 6 months later, well, time to get a haircut.
Absolutely.
Back in my Fantastic Sam days. Did you go to the Salt Lake Barber School down here in 7200 South? Is that
I did.
safe to assume?
The barber school.
The barber
They got
school.
Super creative with the name.
How long ago was that you went down there?
Been coming up on 4 years now.
4 years of cutting hair.
Wow.
Do you still go home at night and you find little pieces of hair stuck in?
Yeah, that's
weird
a
little
hazard of the trade. Like if you
yeah.
ever meet a barber or a stylist that isn't just like, if you're sitting at dinner with them, they're not looking at their hands, looking for hair slivers. That's
what I was going to say. Have you ever gotten hair slivers? Those are painful.
Daily. They suck.
Man,
Do you always feel like, you know how like sometimes after a haircut you're just like, oh, you feel like hair, and you
Itchy
just always feel that way?
Yeah, you get used to
You
it.
get used to it.
I was
Sorry, it's a weird tangent.
No.
This is an interesting thing that we never talk about.
It's hazard of the trade. I was sitting at dinner the other night and I was just kind of rubbing my hands on my pants, and sure enough, it was just felt like I had been cutting hair in them for a week, and it was just a day. But like also, I have a nasty habit of kind of inhaling hair off of my hands when I'm cutting hair. It's awful. It's one of the worst things ever.
Oh man, you need a mask.
Yeah, I mean, there's some folks that will wear plastic gloves to try and prevent hair slivers, stuff like that. But like I said, I have a nasty habit, and I think it's my mustache hairs that kind of tickle my nose. So I wipe my face with my hands, and then next thing I know, I just have to blow my nose because it's just gross. It's awful.
So fast forwarding a little bit to the Salt Lake Barber Company, which you are one of the owners of.
Correct.
It's you and
Eric Stone.
Okay. Yep. So you guys own it together.
Yeah, we're co-owners.
I don't know him too well, but he seems like a nice guy. I mean, how did the idea come? I mean, or is that just kind of a typical thing that most barbers are kind of expected to eventually open up their own shop? Because I see that, right? Like they start at one shop, or they're at a few shops, and then they eventually kind of branch out and do their own thing.
Absolutely. So Eric and I worked at a shop together prior to opening our own. We had both been there for a little while. He worked at Ray's downtown prior to that, which is kind of one of the jumping off points for barbers in Salt Lake. It's a known chain. They have a lot of chairs.
Did you work there?
I didn't work at Ray's. I started at another shop, which I'd prefer not to mention the name.
We don't have to.
Immediately after barber school, I went to, my experience with it was that's where I was getting my haircut. And that's where I kind of made that decision that I wanted to go to barber school. And I, would go after school and sweep the floors and do laundry just kind of for free, just kind of showed up. And I wouldn't say it was quite an apprenticeship, but I just made it very well known that I wanted to work there.
Did you just show up? Like, were they like, who's this guy sweeping the floor?
I mean, at first I did. The owner,
Did they know you? So they knew you were going to come. You wouldn't just show up and grab a broom. And
the owner was my barber prior to going to barber school. And I let that person know, hey, I want to work here, and I'm gonna make sure that you know it. And,
it's like I'm gonna prove it to you.
Exactly. And so I would show up and just work for free and watch people get their haircut. And pretty much the week that I graduated barber school, I was able to work there.
Do you think it was really helpful for you to watch them do that in the real world instead of just seeing things at school?
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about what you learn at school versus, what you learn in the field is that's where the real education starts. You learn the basics in school. You learn fundamentals and techniques. But ultimately, when you get into the field, that's where you learn to cut hair. And on that note, I learned the Tim Height method, who was the owner of the barber school in school. When I got to work in an actual shop, it was actually Eric, who had been cutting hair for a couple of years at that point. My business partner, Eric, who I was like, man, I want to cut hair like that guy. How do I do it? So while I was giving haircuts, very slow and kind of like unsure of myself, I would watch what he was doing. And I picked up all of his techniques and ultimately then kind of developed in my own. But I mean, he taught me how to cut hair. That's the reality.
I do find it interesting that every barber has, at least the ones I've seen. I mean, I've seen a handful of them, at least around Salt Lake City. They all kind of have their own methods.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that it wouldn't be the same way. You would think that there's a way to cut hair and people learn it. And I don't know. Wouldn't you think that everyone would kind of
You
cut
would
hair
think
the
so,
same?
especially, well, I know this sounds really naive, but especially the dude hair.
Yeah.
It's not like there's that many options, right?
Oh, man.
But there probably are. There's more options
There's a
than I
lot
think.
of options.
The classic saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat, like, and I mean, that's maybe in poor
Just because
taste,
everybody gets a haircut like me.
Just don't think about it literally.
Yeah,
and we're
exactly.
fine.
The reality is that like,
I want a tight fade, man.
yeah, there's so many ways, even in fades. We just got our sixth barber in our shop who came from another shop that he'd been there for years at this point. And watching him cut hair is 100% different than the way that we do it. A number of us worked together prior to opening the shop, and we all have a very similar way of cutting because we all kind of watched one another and picked up techniques from one another. And this guy comes in and we're like, whoa, what's he doing? And he's like, whoa, what are they doing?
Do you ever cringe when you see someone like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're cutting hair that way?
No, not necessarily cutting hair that way.
I don't know.
I'll walk down the street and I'll be like, whoa, where did you go? That definitely wasn't a barber haircut,
We need to actually take a quick break here on that note real fast here. Sorry to cut you off, Isaac,
okay.
but we need to take a break to play a message from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back and chat more barbering with Isaac himself. So hang tight. We'll be right back. All right, Chrissy, it's that time of the podcast where we take a few minutes and tell you about our sponsors of this episode of the podcast. These are some great local businesses here in Salt Lake City that are helping keep this podcast going. So please support them, as supporting them is supporting the podcast. Hey, this episode of the podcast is proudly sponsored by our friends at Wizarding Days. It's actually going on this upcoming weekend.
I am so stoked about this. You know what I want to do?
What do you want to do?
I want to take a book and I want to go sit at Wizarding Days and just read. Is that weird?
Not weird at all. It is a 2-day event. It's happening, like I said, this upcoming weekend, February 23rd and 24th at the Mountain America Expo Center, which is formerly Southtown Expo Center. You can get your tickets in advance by visiting their website, wizardingdays.com. That's days with a Z. You're going to be able to check out creative and unique vendors, amazing artists, handcrafted wares, fantasy authors, live entertainment, 20 hours of classes and workshop that explore writing, art, science, and fantasy. There's magic and music. There's free crafts. There's a beard competition that's going to happen. They have a cosplay exhibit, Maker's Market, butter beer, book exchange, trading post, a 10-foot wardrobe for Narnia. There's all kinds of stuff going on.
And I love that this is kind of a smaller thing for introverts. You don't see those often.
Well, there's something
It's
for
really
everybody.
cool.
I mean, there's
totally
free
something
games,
for
there's
everybody.
quests, there's LARPing going on. If you like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, traveling down the rabbit hole to Wonderland, you're going to love this event. Again, go to wizardingdays.com. That's days with a Z. All the information's right there, as well as getting your tickets in advance. This episode of the podcast is also sponsored by our friends at Five Wives Vodka.
I finally tried one of their flavored vodkas this weekend.
Which one was it?
The Heavenly.
Oh, that's
it's the
right.
vanilla vodka.
I told you, you have to try this,
I know.
Chrissy.
And you know what? I was skeptical because I've tried lots of Smirnoff Whipped, which everyone else seems to like, and I think is just horribly disgusting. But Heavenly was so good.
It wasn't super sweet,
It
right?
wasn't overly sweet. It didn't make me feel sick like other vodkas do. Oh, it was just, I probably enjoyed it too much, I would say.
So yeah, Five Wives has 3 different flavors. There's the original flavor, the Five Wives vodka. That's just the plain made from Utah spring water. It's 100% distilled corn. It's gluten-free. They get it from a spring that's hidden in beautiful Ogden Canyon, which is inaccessible by vehicle. So they actually hike out the water 5 gallons at a time. They have the Five Wives Heavenly that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. They have the Five Wives Sinful, which is a flavored vodka as well with a delicious cinnamon taste. But it's unlike other cinnamon products that give you that cinnamon candy taste. Sinful is more like a morning cinnamon roll, which you got to try this one, Chrissy.
That's next on the list.
Our friends at Ogden's Own Distillery are the masterminds behind Five Wives Vodka, and they have some other delicious liquors that you need to try out. They're on sale this month at the local DABC, which is the local state liquor store. They have the Madame Patarini, the Underground, and Porter's Apple, which actually you're drinking some of that right now.
Porter's Apple is amazing.
All are $3 off for the entire month of February. So stock up Like I said, you can get that at the local DABC. This episode of the podcast is also sponsored by our friends at Market Source Real Estate. If you love the charm and character of old homes, you need to contact our friends Monique and Jeremy Higginson at Market Source Real Estate. They're based right here in Sugar House. And I mean, if you're moving to Salt Lake City, if you're moving out of Salt Lake City, if you're moving within Salt Lake City, get in touch with them. For the past 17 years, they've been specializing in helping people buy and sell homes in the greater Salt Lake area as well as Sugar House. They have a great background of flipping homes. They've owned almost 24 homes themselves. So they know what to
look for, especially when you're coming to some place like Sugar House, which is great, but it is full of older homes. So their website is thinksaltlakecity.com. Their phone number, give them a call, 801-811-1789. I'm going to put all those links and all that for all of our sponsors in the show notes for them. Seriously, if you're moving to Salt Lake City, if you're moving out of Salt Lake City, within Salt Lake City, contact our friends at Market Source Real Estate. And many thanks to all three of them for sponsoring this episode of I Am Salt Lake. Let's get back to that conversation with Isaac. What do you think the most challenging thing with being a barber? I know it's a very broad, generic question, but I'm curious what your response is, Isaac.
Yeah. So, and it kind of ties in with what we kind of started talking about before the break, but you had asked kind of where opening the shop came from and that stuff. I think that right now in the industry, and especially in Salt Lake, and I've heard you mention it before on talking to other barbers and stylists, the market is a little saturated, but there's still a lot of hair to be cut in Salt Lake City. It's a growing market. There's a lot of barber shops and there's a lot of barbers, but ultimately, we're going to keep seeing barbershops open. And I don't think it's for any other reason that barbers themselves aren't given a fair shake when it comes to working in a barbershop. What we're trying to do in our shop is really change the way that barbershops are run in the sense that we want our employees to be empowered. We're working off of a very fair booth rent versus a really poor commission. And we want our barbers to feel invested in our shop as we are. And ultimately, that's kind of what led me and Eric to open our own shop. We had that experience in the shop that we worked at before, as well as some others that work with us. And that's why you kind of see so many barbers opening their own places. They come from shops in which they're just not given the opportunity to really thrive and succeed. And there comes a point where the barber will always see that the grass is greener on opening their own place or moving out of state and getting out of the city, and I think that's the biggest challenge right now is really finding a place where you fit in, and finding a place where you feel like you belong. So
what's the barbering scene? Do you know much of it, like how it is out of state? Like when you go into other states,
yeah.
It seems like they're on a lot of corners here in Salt Lake City.
Absolutely. I mean, you go nearly anywhere right now and you're seeing the same influx of the barber culture. One reason for that is that in most states, barber licenses had essentially been kind of taken out of legislature, since around the late 70s, early 80s. And it's just up until now that states are allowing a sole barber license. Before, you actually had to be a cosmetologist to barber. And there are a couple states still that operate in that way. California is one, and there's a lot of barbershops in California, but most of those folks that are barbering there actually have a cosmetologist license as well. But you still see that kind of upswing in barbershops opening all over the country right now. Yeah.
Sometimes I do wonder if more actually are opening around here because the barber school is right, in the center.
Absolutely.
And people just kind of learn there and then don't spread
I don't know.
out
There's
quite
probably
as much.
similar schools in other states, though. Huh?
There are, so the barber school here has a really great reputation nationwide. When I was in barber school, there was actually even a couple people from out of the country, from Canada, that were attending.
Yeah, we've heard that on other, like when I've had other barbers on here, they may like, someone from New York's there.
Absolutely. But I mean, literally, when I was there was a huge class. I was kind of there when they let the class sizes swell. And nearly, I would say over 50% of the people that I went to school with were from out of state. Now, some of them went back to where they, traveled from, but most stayed here in town. And that's again why you kind of see a real heavy saturation of barbers. But it also creates a really cool network and tapestry over most Northern America of barbershops. It's really cool to... I'm always looking to travel and visit my friends when I
are most barbers cool with each other, or sometimes you can get some tension.
Yeah, most are. It's a really close network. If you didn't go to school with someone, you work with someone who went to school with someone. I would say that most barbers are really cool with each other. However,
I guess in the industry, right? You probably even find it
in any industry,
your computer industry.
Oh yeah, and like the design world for me, it's a small world wherever you are because
they're like, oh, Chrissy, she sucks at designing.
Yeah, everyone says that.
Like I said, most barbers are cool with each other. Where it gets a little tricky is with shop owners that just, again, aren't given the barbers the fair shake. And so they develop kind of a reputation. And there's some shops that kind of run in an elitist kind of mode, stuff like that. And that's a whole other conversation.
There's always those tensions no matter where you go. But it is kind of cool because every barbershop seems to have its own personality.
Absolutely.
So it seems like people can really find one that fits them. It's not like they're all the same. There's just too many barbershops. You can pick one that you feel comfortable in, and that kind of keeps everyone going.
Well, and you stay pretty busy,
absolutely,
right? Like you stay, like you personally.
Right now I'm typically pretty full throughout the week, like a week ahead of time. I might have availability a couple days out, but on a daily basis, I'm personally booked out.
We talked about challenging things. Like, is there been any rewarding things with being a barber? Like, what is one or two rewarding things?
Everything about it's rewarding.
Yeah, I guess just being your own boss more or less.
I mean, that's the thing, right? As I get to be my own boss, I get to set my own hours. Like, I just changed my schedule around so that way I could go to gym in the middle of the day versus having to go before or after work. And I get to do that because I get to set my own hours. The amount of people I get to talk to on a daily basis about a wide variety of things, I get to learn a little bit about a lot, and I get to kind of put my, toes in the water with a lot of different industries because I make friends that, do this or do that. And the connections I've made is unbelievable.
In a way, your job is very similar to what we do.
Yeah.
Just bringing people in, getting to know them, getting to know what they do.
I think we were actually talking about, didn't we talk about like having like microphones in there to record, or was that with somebody else?
No, I do believe that we talked a little bit about that, but to your point, Chrissy, I mean, it's absolutely true. Like, I've always said since being in this industry that if you want to, like, it's, what's the website, like, Angie's List, like if you want to know like an electrician or a plumber or something like that, ask your barber because guaranteed one of their clients does something like that.
Kate, that is actually super good advice. Yeah, that's really good advice.
If you want a connection, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of cards for other people I have in my back bar, but at my shop, we have a community board where we encourage everyone to leave a card for their business, because
wow, what a great networking opportunity.
Yeah, and
exactly.
there's some I Am Salt Lake. Maybe we need to bring more, but I did put some I Am Salt Lake cards there, Chrissy.
Nice job.
Don't worry.
Some stickers too.
I did it. What, so I don't know, did we mention like how many barbers you have at your shop? Let's talk a little bit more about Salt Lake Barber Company.
Absolutely. So at our shop, we have 6 barbers, including Eric and myself. We set the shop up to have 6 chairs. We don't share stations with other barbers. It's kind of, one of the things that we do there for our barbers. We really want to, like I said, let them feel invested. So their station is theirs. They pay for that. It's downtown Salt Lake City. We opened up in a neighborhood that we're super excited to be in. It's growing.
What I like about it, free parking too. It's not a hassle either, right? Like you're downtown, but like you're not downtown far enough that you have to spend 30 minutes looking for a parking space.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay for parking.
Yeah.
And there is ample street parking. We have a little lot on site. And that's a huge part of when you're looking for a space. We got in with some really, really great landlords in the area that want local, unique businesses that want to be there long term. Our space used to be an office that had been there for 30 years. Next door, there was a cupcake shop that had been there for 12 years and a frame shop that's there for 10 years. And we just got some new neighbors that we're really excited about. But our neighborhood is growing so fast. They just announced the Food Alley downtown or right over there in that Central 9th. The Sears just closed, and they're going to probably be putting something really close there. And the amount of housing that's going up is unbelievable. It's ridiculous.
I was kind of bummed out though when that Sears shut down, man. That's like Salt Lake history right
That's
there.
like where the taco carts are.
Well, there's the taco carts.
by the
I bet
Sears.
you, I bet you eat at those taco
landmark.
carts all the time.
Everyone's super, super nervous about what's going to happen to the taco carts. We do eat there quite a bit, but ultimately,
happen to the taco?
they're on city property. I don't see them moving anywhere.
Where are you located? What
Yep. So
area
we're on
is this?
we're on 10 East 800 South, which is the corner of Main Street and 800 South. Some people get that confused with 10th East, but we are in between State and Main, kind of closer to Main Street there, right across from Steve Harris Ferrari dealership, which is also moving soon, and then across from the old Sears. Yeah, right there.
It's great spot, great location, great shop, by the way. I mean, I remember the first time I walked in there, I was just like, this is awesome. Now, here's a question. I might be completely off here, but I've been in a handful of barbershops. None of them have sinks. Is that a typical barber thing?
Wait, like to wash hair?
Yeah.
So it is kind of a little bit more common in the barber industry not to have like a shampoo bowl.
Yeah.
There are some that do. We do have a shampoo bowl.
Oh, do you?
Yep.
Okay, must have just not noticed it.
Yeah, it's in the back of the room. We did set it up in there for anyone that wants to
Wash their hair.
Yeah, put it into their appointment. It's available as an option to us. But we also do a steam towel head wrap with our services, and you kind of do that for three reasons. One is to get that excess hair off the head,
Which you do a great job of, by the way.
And then, also to kind of soften the hair for a shave. And then it's also relaxing. But that's kind of the more common thing that you find in barbershops versus a shampoo. I would say that most barbershops that are around town were built out of buildings that didn't have the plumbing adequate for it. And it's not something that they really push in barber school. However, we wanted to put it in there to have that option.
Yeah, I was just curious if that was like an old school barber mentality.
I mean,
you're just like, oh, gotta carry it.
Exactly.
Sit in the chair.
In the school that we went to, which pushes a pretty hardcore traditional barbering experience, it's not something that's pushed as much. Typically, you'll see the steam towel head wrap is kind of the replacement for that.
Are there any old dudes that are still cutting hair around like Salt Lake, or are they all just a bunch of like bearded dudes like us that are?
No, there are
just young?
actually. Yeah, there's a few, and there's the guys that went to barber school years ago. One of our instructors he opened a barbershop in Trolley Square with a couple of our friends, and he's going to be barbering in there once he gets back from a mission that he's on right now. But there are still a few out there. They are in that realm right now because of when they got their license and when barbering licenses were stopped being available.
Yeah,
they're kind of getting towards the end of their, I don't want to say life cycle, but the career cycle, getting to that point where they're retiring, selling off their shops. Folks like us are coming in and buying them out. They're still out there, but I think that it's kind of a passing of the torch at this point.
Do you have any like crazy haircut stories, or is that just completely dumb?
There's always some funky requests that you get out there. I haven't had one personally for a while. I'm to the point where I see the same people, all the time. But one of the weirder ones was when we were in barber school, me and a guy that started at the same time. We kind of collectively gave this girl a haircut that was a really short bob, essentially like a bowl cut that came just about mid-ear line. And then she wanted everything shaved underneath. And it was the most awkward looking haircut. And we were so nervous. This was one of our first 2 or 3 haircuts on the floor.
And it was specifically what she asked for.
Specifically, she actually kept telling us to take this bob, quote unquote bob. It was a bowl cut, shorter and shorter. And we were just like, what the hell are we doing?
But she was stoked on it.
Oh yeah. And the teachers even there, our instructors were just like, just give her
like,
what she wants.
What did you guys do?
They were just like, give her, if that's what she wants, do it. But to me, that's still one of the haircuts that will go down as
it gives you nightmares at night.
Infamous.
It's just, you can't unsee it. You know, it was awful.
I wasn't even sure if you would have an answer for that question. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe somebody like requested, him to shave steps in their hair.
And we still do. I mean, we still get some weird requests here and there in my shop. But like I said, I'm booked consistently enough to the point where I see regulars. It's the guys that are still taking some walk-ins that every once in a while just get something kind of funky.
Now you take walk-ins at your shop, right? But mostly mention the website address right now for people, but we'll mention it again at the end and,
no problem.
and all that too.
www.saltlakebarberco.com. And we have an online schedule there. That we will have a website there at some point in time. We've kind of slacked it, putting it that will redirect into the booking system. But right now it just redirects into our booking system. We do take walk-ins, but we like to honor an appointment. We give everyone 45 minutes on a haircut, and that allows ample time for a thorough consultation, the haircut, and then getting everything cleaned up and styled at the end. And the walk-in deal, we take them when we can, but we're getting busy to the point where, appointments are guaranteed and preferred.
If someone was to open up their own business, do you have any advice you would give them? Not necessarily a barber shop, but just a business in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think about this stuff a lot, like kind of the push towards opening my own shop really has given me some perspective there. And I found that I really love business. And
what do you love about it?
That's really unique.
I mean, it's awesome, man. I've had such a good experience with it. But the answer to that question, one of my clients actually kind of was working through kind of how we got everything started the other day. And to answer that question, my advice would be, figure out the why before you open the business. I'm a barber. I know the kind of the next step from being just a barber is opening a barber shop. But what is it, or why do you think your shop would be beneficial? Figure that out first, rather than the where, the when, and figure out why do you want to open that shop? What purpose does it serve? And how does that enrich your community, your staff,
kind of create a North Star that you strive towards always.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like for us, our why was we wanted to provide the best place possible for work. We wanted to empower our staff. We wanted to make sure that everyone felt invested in it. And then it sounds silly. It's one of the worst taglines, but it really creates a trickle down effect. You have happy barbers. They're going to give a great experience. And then the client will walk out super excited. They'll tell their friends. It really trickles down the whole way. But, we knew why we wanted to open before we knew where, when, all that stuff. That's kind of the advice I'd give is really figure out what opportunities are you trying to present with opening a business.
I love it. Just because one thing I noticed, I'm sure it's in a lot of places, but Salt Lake City is a very entrepreneur. There's a lot of new businesses opening up, and a lot of people are kind of trying to do their own thing. And so I'm sure they would love your advice.
Very entrepreneurial friendly.
Absolutely.
It's one of those places. So
I'm sure every state says that though, Chrissy.
I don't know, man. We're pretty awesome. I stand by it.
Let's talk Salt Lake City then. If someone was visiting Salt Lake, say this upcoming weekend, what would you tell them to do, Isaac? Where would you tell them to go check out? What would Isaac recommend?
No, this is actually one of my favorite questions that you guys ask, and I've actually given some online answers.
I love it.
This one.
Yeah.
But, I just had a friend in town from Canada, and I love showing people around. But it'd be anything from a couple restaurants I really love, or a couple restaurant bars. Copper Common is one of my all-time favorites. I'm friends with the bartenders there. They have the best burger in town. Their menu is fantastic. I love some of the dive bars in towns like Murphy's, Dick and Dixie's, Duffy's. All have great food. Dick and Dixie's is next to Yoko Ramen, and that place is the hot spot in town. My buddy Max is the chef there. I would always recommend going and seeing like a concert at Urban Lounge or Kilby Court. Kilby Court is one of the most unique venues that I've been to anywhere. It's like being in someone's shed in their backyard and watching an amazing concert.
Have you ever been there, Chrissy?
I have never, but I've heard so much about Kilby Court.
I have to take Chrissy there. I spent so many of the early
would you say early 2000s there?
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
It's one of those places that you look at some of the bands that are popular now, and that's where they toured when they first came through town. And it's so great. You know, if you were looking to do a couple things that like didn't cost any money, the downtown walking tour is something that I always recommend to people. Have you guys ever done that?
not really.
We
No.
haven't.
I live here. I don't tour.
You can Google it, the downtown Salt Lake walking tour, and in front of a lot of these historic buildings, they have little placards.
Oh,
in the front
the
of them.
plaques that you can follow, and they're numbered.
They're numbered, exactly. So you can go and tour downtown kind of on your own accord.
We should actually do that because I love reading those plaques when you're walking by them.
Yeah, it's
when
really great.
When it warms up, Chrissy, we'll go do it.
It's
It has to be warm.
extensive too. And then kind of getting back to even the Rose Park, my house that I used to own was on the Jordan River Trailway. And I used to get on my bike with one of my roommates, and we'd ride our bikes basically as far south as it could take us, which is, you know, near Point of the Mountain, then as far north. And they just extended that into, I mean, you can ride that till almost Layton, and it's really incredible. But yeah, those are a few of the things that I would do.
I love these replies, man.
Yeah, these are really good.
And again, if you want to like find a place to eat or something like that, ask your barber, man. We know so many people in the industry.
Sure.
Like,
So if you come to Salt Lake first, go get a haircut.
Well,
There you go.
that's
then
the
ask
thing,
your
right?
barber for
Like,
recommendations.
There you go. They can go online, book an appointment with you when they're coming to town, and say, "All right, Isaac, I heard you on I Am Salt Lake, but tell me other places to go. What's happening?"
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I was thinking about to mention is a lot of people don't realize it, but Salt Lake has one of the best tattoo scenes I think anywhere. You know, come get a tattoo. There are so many incredible artists. You know, I have a lot of friends that are kind of into that stuff, so I always recommend people checking out shops. Like I took my friend from Canada to all the barbershops in Salt Lake, and then I took him to all the tattoo shops in Salt Lake, and it was really fun.
Maybe I'm not allowed to mention this. I can edit it out if I'm not, but you have a barber in your shop that's a brother of Will XX, right?
Correct.
That we've had on I Am Salt Lake. So I didn't know if that was top secret.
No, that's perfectly mentionable. That's one of the shops, you know, Black Salt. Will is fantastic. I'm looking forward to getting tattooed by him as well.
Have you gotten tattooed by him?
I haven't yet, but I've talked to him a number of times. I'm just trying to figure out exactly what I want and where I want it, but he's on the list.
Getting a tattoo from Will X would be like equal to meditating.
He's a cool guy, man. He's
such a
chill.
Have you ever been in a studio? It's one of the most incredible spaces. It's very macabre and dark. And his bathroom, they in his shop, they made the bathroom look like a wormhole was opening up in the ceiling and the bathroom is exploding and you're in the middle of it. It's so
we got to go because it's really close to your shop, right?
It's literally just around the corner. We're on 800 South. They're on 900 South, right on Main Street.
And you're not far. You were mentioning Duffy's. Do you ever make it over to the Spot?
I was there on Saturday, as a matter of fact.
That's a fun little bar, too. I used to go to more back in the day. I don't really go out to bars a whole lot these days, but
our neighborhood is changing so rapidly. We have some of the coolest things around there, bars, restaurants, and it's just going to keep getting better and better.
For people that are listening that never been to Salt Lake City, right? What do you think one of the biggest misconceptions or a big misconception or what do you think that
I mean, the biggest misconception, especially with people that I know out of state, is, you know, they think that you're going to come to town and not be able to get a drink or get drunk, you know. And, you know, the reality is one, we have, in my opinion, one of the most prospering bar scenes in town or in the nation. You know, in the next 5 years or so, it's going to be thriving. There's so much cool stuff happening there, but the silly thing too is that people don't realize that altitude has a lot to do with it. So they'll come and have a couple drinks and I'll be like, "Oh, so you didn't think you were going to get drunk, huh?"
Maybe that's why the laws are
and then,
so
I mean,
strict.
we have a lot of great local distilleries that are popping up, and then the microbrew.
Oh, man, the craft breweries out here.
Going back to something you ought to do, go check out Fisher Brewery. That place is my favorite.
We still haven't been there, Chrissy.
We haven't. I really want to.
I want to get those guys on the podcast. They're on my list.
It's going to be bad news.
You're for real. You're moving across.
I'm here for Isaac. He's across the street.
Yeah, I mean they already know me, but I'm so stoked.
Any other? You mentioned a few local eating spots. I guess you mentioned quite a few. I was going to say because if you had any other favorite local eating spots that you like, but I guess you mentioned
too many to name.
A handful of them.
Public Kitchen is one that I'm at quite a bit. I love the breakfast there. It's like the simplest menu in town, but they execute perfect every time. Way too many to mention. I could go on for days.
a random question. If you could do a Skype call with any living person, who would it be?
At this point, I would probably have to say that I would absolutely love just to talk to Barack Obama for a little bit.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever listen to the podcast interview that he did with Mark Maron on WTF?
I did not.
You got it. Everybody has to go download that episode and listen to that interview. It makes Barack Obama just like a normal dude.
Yeah.
And this is when he was president that he had that interview.
And he just did the Dave Letterman show on Netflix too. And
see, I didn't watch that one yet either.
Yeah, it's
pretty good
it's
stuff.
Fantastic. But state of the world right now, I'm talking to Barack Obama.
Yeah, man.
Let's run down the list how people can contact you again, the barbershop, all of that, and I don't know, run down any contact, anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things. We're on the corner of 8th and Main, 10 East, 800 South, www.saltlakebarberco.com. Our phone number is 385-261-2196. You can give us a call. Yeah, that's the gamut there.
Anything else you want to ask him, Chrissy? Well, before that, I do want to thank. You've been a great barber, and B, you've been a great support for the podcast. So I wanted to get that on the recording here. You're a great guy. I recommend everybody to at least come down to your shop, check it out, play some video games. You have the video game system in there.
Thank you. And I want to mention, I just want to thank you guys for what you do for the community.
You've been a listener for a while, right?
Yeah, I've been listening for years at this point, and it wasn't until just, I think, inside the last year and a half that I actually started engaging with some of the podcasts I listen to, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I am curious. So you listen to the podcast fairly often.
Yeah.
Is there a question that you have heard us ask someone that you have wanted to have an answer for? Like you've been, how sometimes you want to yell back at your phone?
That's a good question.
I don't know. Maybe
is there a question that we've
maybe
asked?
Maybe you wanted to tell us a random skill and you were all prepared for it and we didn't even ask.
Well, no, because I know some of the questions I ask are similar for person to person.
Honestly, I wouldn't say anything that comes up on the podcast that you would ask, but it's just kind of funny listening to you guys interview different people, and sometimes it's people I know, sometimes it's not, but you always get that feeling like you're want to be in the room and be like, I know that guy, I know that guy. But
I totally get that.
Yeah, no, it's honestly, I love engaging on when you ask questions on Facebook, stuff like that. That's my favorite, is kind of being able to input on some of your interviews where you ask, hey, we're interviewing this person. What's something I could ask them? I always try and come up with a response.
Do you have a question for us? We should have the people ask us a question.
I don't know. I don't know if I like that idea.
Question. I don't know. And it doesn't matter. You don't really need to have a question for us. Anyway, it's been a great chat, Isaac. I always tell people, let's catch up down the road, right?
I love it.
Or next time I come in for a haircut.
We'll see you in the chair.
Thanks so much.
All right. Many thanks again to Isaac for coming on this episode and sharing his story. Great conversation that was, Chrissy.
I know. It was hard to stop.
It's conversations like this that I love doing the podcast. There's something about connecting with that person, having them open up, having them share their story.
Well, it's almost like when you forget you're recording and you're just enjoying talking. It's just amazing.
All of the links to connect with him and connect with the Salt Lake Barber Company, those are all going to be at iamsaltlake.com/317 for episode 317. But we have reviews. I think we mentioned it on the last episode that you now can leave reviews on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
On the I Am Salt Lake Facebook page, which we got a whole bunch of reviews here.
We did. And thank you guys so much. It's really cool to see them.
No, I just wanted to read them because the reviews, they help us out. It's fun to read them. So it's that time of the podcast that we're going to read some reviews here. Facebook reviews. We got one here from Michael Castro. Great guy, great individual. And he wrote, absolute best podcast about Salt Lake City. As a New Yorker who lived in SLC for a few years, this was my source of information on what to do and what was happening in the city. Gave me invaluable insight into the lives of my new neighbors. If you live in Salt Lake or are planning to visit, I Am Salt Lake is the podcast to give you the real deal feel for the people of the lake. Don't believe the hype. Not everyone in Salt Lake City is a Mormon elder. There is diversity and tons of different personalities that make up this great city, and this podcast explores it. Wasn't that great?
That's a really good review.
I mean, I feel like maybe we should put that somewhere.
I know. I was just thinking that. I'm like, where can we put that? I like this.
Thank you so much, Michael, for in 5 stars there on the Facebook. And then Blaine Nielsen wrote, love it. It's fun. It's local and it's worth your time. # support local SLC. I don't know if you want to read
straight into the point.
Yeah. I'll let you read there's one from Jared Aguilar, which is one of our Patreon supporters.
Oh.
Do you see that there or no?
I don't.
Oh, I went to most recent. Here, well, I'll read it. Jared Aguilar, he wrote, best podcast in Salt Lake City, Utah, period. And then do you see the Monique Higginson one there? Okay, I'll read that one too. Monique Higginson, which is actually one of our sponsors. She does Market Source Real Estate. She gave it 5 stars as well. I have learned about so many interesting people and facts about Salt Lake City from this podcast. I've been listening for 4 years. So props to her. I mean,
that's almost the whole time.
Pretty much almost the whole time.
Yeah.
So she's seen a lot of growth here with the podcast. Do you see the one from Matt Gwynn there, Chrissy?
I do. See, and I was on a different tab from you.
Yeah. If you want to read that one.
Absolutely. The thing I've really liked about I Am Salt Lake is that now I have a number of new places to visit and new things to do. The episodes can occasionally get redundant due to lack of guest diversity, but that has been a minor concern. There was a time I was counting down the days until I could leave Utah. However, this podcast has really helped me to see how blind I was to some of the things that the area has to offer. The show has repaired the recreational broken record that I was experiencing from doing all the same things over and over again. I have so many positive experiences as a direct result from this podcast. Give it a listen.
And that's from Matt Gwynn. He actually gives it 4 stars.
Yes.
Which I wanted to address. First of all, I love you, Matt. Thank you for the support. You're in our Facebook group and all that.
You know what I like about Matt? He gives us constructive criticism.
Well, no. And that's what I want to give. I don't want to put him on the spot here. But I figured the podcast would be a great place to address this.
Absolutely.
Because he also gave us an iTunes review, which I'm going to read our iTunes reviews here in a minute, which he only gave, I believe, 4 stars on there too, which there's a part of me that I give a guy credit that's like, hey, you know what? They're 4 stars, which maybe to him is really, really good.
Yeah, that's
maybe
true.
4 stars is really good. However, I am kind of curious what he means that there's a lack of diversity, get redundant. I do agree, maybe we just had a barber on the podcast and we brought one on again. But if you look back over all 317 episodes of the podcast, I mean, we've had hip hop artists. I've had political people on the podcast. I've had artists. I've had, business store, food trucks. Polygamists. I don't know how much more diverse we can get.
I think really what would be so great is if people could send us in ideas, you know, if there's some type of person or some specific person that you would like to hear from, we would love to do that. We want to be as diverse as possible. We don't want to limit ourselves.
And it's hard too when you're only doing an episode a week. That's only 4 interviews in a month.
Which there's so many people.
And what's hard too is it's scheduling. Our time, their time.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to play the episode, but I am curious what he does mean by lack of diversity and how it gets redundant. Maybe the questions. I don't know.
Oh, we definitely but it's fun to ask the same questions because people have different answers.
Exactly. Plus. Yeah. I think if you ask the same questions, then they kind of can prep themselves a little bit more, the people that come on the show.
That's true.
I don't know. Matt, we love you though. Seriously,
yes, thank you, Matt.
We're not mad. We just kind of are curious always how we can get better.
Well, I love it because it gives us something to strive for.
And then Erin Riggs, who I know she's been listening to the podcast for a little while. She's in our Facebook group as well, which I urge everybody to please join our Facebook group. You can go to iamsaltlake.com/group and it'll send you to our private little Facebook I Am Salt Lake community. Anyways, Erin Riggs wrote on our Facebook review, I love this podcast, reveals the best parts of Utah and Salt Lake. So thank you very much for those reviews.
Yes, thank you guys so much.
Go to facebook.com/iamsaltlake. Leave us a review. And then we have some iTunes reviews here, Chrissy, which I'll pull up here really quickly. And I want to read these really quick. Sorry for so many reviews. We've just gotten so many here. And I want to make sure to give them all
we just
credit.
Really, really appreciate them.
O'Shaughnessy wrote, he gave us a Facebook review here. The best of Salt Lake. They write, I don't know, he or she. While I live in Utah County and not actually in Salt Lake, I listen to this podcast every week. The hosts are fantastic and the guests are amazing. Each week I learned about something new that makes this beautiful city as well as our great state So Awesome. Tune in. You will love it. Did you write that, Chrissy?
I totally did.
You gave me the head nod like, hey, yeah, I wrote that.
That'd be hilarious if I had the time to do that.
But yeah, go to, and then we got another review. Matt wrote, he did the same one on the Facebook as iTunes. And if you go to iamsaltlake.com/iTunes, that will send you right to the iTunes page to leave us a review. It only takes you a second.
Yeah.
But it's very cool. We got 100, we broke 100 ratings, 100 iTunes reviews.
Yeah, that's
so that's
amazing.
really cool.
I love it.
They help, boost our ratings. Some people say it doesn't. I believe it does.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, it genuinely helps people know whether or not they would be interested in listening to the podcast.
I don't know. Do you read reviews though before you subscribe?
I totally do.
Subscribe to a podcast?
Whenever I look at a new podcast, I look at how many stars it has and I judge it.
Really?
Yes.
Honest to God.
Yeah. And then I'll go read the reviews. I'll probably read a lot of reviews. And which is really bad.
Before you even download an episode.
Which is terrible because it does warp your perspective.
See, guys, this is why you need to leave us iTunes reviews.
Right? Because, it's fun to research them too. But yeah, I don't know, man.
Wow, you're a tough cookie to get to subscribe to a podcast.
I'm actually a really difficult listener.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of subscribing, if you have not subscribed to I Am Salt Lake, it takes you just a second. Hit that subscribe button, however you're listening to it. If you're listening to us on the desktop, consider getting a podcast player for your smartphone, iPhone, Android. All of that's going to be.
Or even if you have Spotify on your phone, you can use Spotify for everything now.
Yeah, just search I Am Salt Lake in Spotify. You can listen to us directly on there. I think that's going to do it for this episode.
I think so.
Let's give some love again to our sponsors for this episode. Five Wives Vodka, very delicious. Wizarding Days happens this upcoming weekend, so hopefully you guys already have your tickets for that. And Market Source Real Estate, whether you're leaving Utah, coming to Utah,
or just moving within Utah.
Get a hold of these awesome realtors. Support them as that is supporting the podcast. Hey, don't forget to connect with us and join our Facebook group. You can find that again by going to iamsaltlake.com/group. Anything you want to add on this episode, Chrissy?
Get out and support local.
You guys have a great week and enjoy the city. Like Chrissy says, support local, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Good night, Grammy.